Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Sridhar Ramaswamy, the founder of Neeva.
Super excited to talk to you, James. My name is Sridhar Ramaswamy. I'm a co-founder of a search engine called Neeva. Its goal is to take search back to its roots of serving users. I used to be at Google for 15, 16 years, was a big part of the ads team there. And prior to that, I spent a decade on the East Coast. I'm a reformed academic from Brown University and Bell Labs.
Wonderful. Okay, so you've had an amazing journey. And as you said, you came from the Garden State, right? You were here based
That's
here.
right.
So
Scotch Plains.
wonderful, wonderful. And so much of the legacy of our information age has been developed here, just particularly with the transistor that came out of Bell Labs, which is in every device. And there's only about 16th trillion of them or something like that.
That's right. That's right. And the Unix operating system. Every modern operating system is based on the code that was developed in Bell Labs. Android is Unix, and so is Apple, and so is the Mac. And so there's that place gave a lot.
That's a great reminder. So talk to us about that journey you've taken, just a little more context there, because you've seen so much. And if
Yep.
you could take us through that, what you've learned, and then how you got to where you are now, that would be great.
Yeah, my career is a little bit of an unusual one in the sense that, I didn't do a PhD thinking I was going to be an executive in a software firm. And I didn't go into Google thinking that I would, create a startup that in some sense is the opposite of the principles that Google has. So there's a lot of evolve constantly that has been constant in my life. So if I rewind, I grew up in India, got a bachelor's at one of the best schools on the planet. Super lucky to be there. Came to Brown to do a PhD, not because I had a passion for research, but it seemed like kind of a reasonable thing to do at the time. I wish I could tell you that I had a brilliant plan for my life. And I went to work right away, didn't consider a startup because, I had a bunch of family obligations. I had to help my dad build a house. And so getting a job sounded a whole lot better than going to a startup and not making a lot of money. But after about 10 years, I came to the conclusion that, I was not really a brilliant researcher that was going to change the world. And I didn't enjoy being a mediocre researcher that wrote papers that like 10 people in the world read. And so I wanted to have more impact. I did like software engineering. So came out to the Valley about 25 years ago, just before our first son was born. And I got a spectacular introduction to the world of startups. This was the dot-com era. And I worked for a company that wanted to have dot so badly in its name that it's changed its name from Epiphany to E.Piphany. We wanted to put the dot in our name. Spectacular blowout. Stock went from $300 to $3. And I joined Google early, decided to be a software engineer again, but really grew with the company over there. Of course, incredible growth, like the growth that Google had, generates incredible opportunity for the patient and the ambitious. And I was that. I was patient, I was ambitious, I was willing to learn. So I went from being an engineer that wrote code for a living to running a team of 10,000 people, and a product that made like $120 billion then, $250 billion last year. And so it was quite the incredible journey with so much learning in people, in systems, in leadership, in humility, and funny stuff like public speaking. I worked with a coach once that, figuratively beat the crap out of me to make me a better public speaker.
Great, great. That's really interesting as far as what you built at Google is one of the greatest sort of case studies in enterprise and tech companies, right? And
That's right.
it just so happens this week they've sort of had some layoffs, but I mean, it's still one of the best run, most profitable companies on the planet, right?
That's right.
And
It is an incredible team. The founders, people like Eric Schmidt, who came on very early, really set the tone for the company. It was an incredibly ambitious company from the very beginning. He treated people well. I was young and hot-headed and kind of stupid, and I would get into like these bitter arguments with the founders all the time. I would joke to people that the biggest positive thing that I could say about the founders was that they tolerated me. They didn't fire me because I would get into, like, as I said, bitter arguments with them about various kinds of things. They sort of enjoyed it. They encouraged it. They never, none of them ever yelled at me ever, even though I gave them plenty of opportunity to do that. It was quite an amazing company, and in many ways, the Google of today, which punctuated by things like the layoffs from last week and the fifth large antitrust case, sadly against my old team, that came out yesterday, are like almost like a reflection of things that can go wrong when taken to the extreme. What I mean by that is, of course, Google was an ambitious company, but at some point it was a monopoly. And so, but ambitious people don't curb their ambition; they want more. And so, this is how Google went about putting people like Yelp out of business by putting Maps on top, where we ended up putting more and more ads. I made many of those decisions, but you live in a context where growth is expected. You're expected to grow by 20% year on year. And similarly, even the layoffs, I would say, come from like this unending ambition. Oh, let's do self-driving cars. Let's do cloud. Let's do something else. A lot of it is a consequence of surplus. Google search throws up so much surplus cash that like Google literally does not know what to do with the cash. And so they invest it in all kinds of things. Even the DoubleClick acquisition, same formula. We were not happy with serving ads via AdSense and on search, which are like some of the most profitable businesses ever. We, of course, wanted to serve ads everywhere. And we had this thesis that TV advertising would go online. That's why we bought DoubleClick in 2007. And so a lot of the DOJ case that came out yesterday is against that division. And so things like where Google is as a company, where Google is as a product, is almost a reflection of our growth at all costs, growth continuously at every scale kind of mentality that just ends up producing a lot of problems, along the way. And I would say that Neeva, in a strange way, I don't think of myself as a rebel. I'm kind of soft-spoken and don't really like get into big arguments with people. But there is a part of me that like rebels against what I see is wrong. We started Neeva because we were like, a world in which Google is the only provider of information to the entire planet. We were like, that's just distasteful. It doesn't matter how good a company Google is. Competition is important. And so, yeah, Google is enormously successful, but that kind of success where I think they make more money than most countries do is kind of scary. That's the place that it's at.
right. And before we move on to Neeva, I just wanted to ask you your perspective. When we look at entrepreneurs who grow with their companies, founders, right? Sometimes the hardest thing is sort of transitioning. And as we look at Google, they seem to have transitioned to Eric Schmidt and others very successfully. And do you agree with that? Did that work out well?
I think they did a very good job transitioning to Eric. I don't think the success that Google had would have come without that. Remember, he took over in 2000, 3 years into the company. I think he was very good for the company. Eric is a close friend. Mike, I would not be where I am in my life without his support, without his mentorship. I'm forever grateful. But he also was humble enough to let he didn't try to make it his company. And so that dynamic was really, really important. And that made for a very successful decade. He was CEO from 2001 to 2011. Before Larry decided to come back. By the way, that was a pivotal moment similar to the moment that we are at. 2011 was the year in which Google finally decided that it was out of China. Hugely controversial decision, in which Larry, Sergey, and Eric were not on the same place. This was the year that we were all terrified that Facebook would eat our lunch in advertising and would like take over the world. And so, Larry, became CEO again to do Google Plus and really try and make a big play on the social side. Now, 12 years later, the two of them are kind of back on the throes of what is potentially another major revolution with AI. And I think that is important to learn. Professional CEOs do not like making all or nothing bets. It's a job. It's not their legacy. And so founders, I can feel this even at Neeva. Vivek and my ability to take big bets is far larger than likely like anyone else that's going to come run things professionally within. So I would say the transition has worked out okay, but these sort of professional CEOs sometimes don't really work out in war-like situations. I know it's a terrible analogy with real wars going on, but when there is like massive change, sometimes you need the courage and gumption of an owner to try big things.
That is a really good insight, Sridhar. Now, just looking back really quickly, the China decision.
Yeah.
Right decision or wrong decision?
China didn't want Google. We could sort of have clung on, but it's very clear that, the Chinese had no real desire to see Google be a successful company. We were getting slowly but surely crushed by all of the issues that were, that came as a result of operating in China. But even China changes, right? The China of today is nothing like the China of 2000, 2010. So a different way of thinking about it is, maybe the right answer for Google would have been to stay patient and then figure out a business opportunity. But here is an important but. The but is all of us have to ask ourselves at some point or other in our life whether we stand for more than money, whether there are principles that are inviolable. By the way, I'm sure it has not escaped your attention that no one in our country will make a movie that has like Chinese villains or criticize China in any way. They just won't do it. And from that perspective, I think exiting China was a principled decision. But there's sort of, this is one of these things where there's no right and wrong. You can argue this all day long, and you will write teleological history. You will write the history based on the outcome.
Got it. Okay, so now let's move into founding Neeva. Tell us that sort of transition that you took.
Yeah, it was a leap of faith, just like going from being a moderately successful researcher at Bell Labs to being a software engineer, or even from Epiphany, where I was running a team of 100 people, to going back to being an engineer at Google. It was a leap of faith that I could start a company. It had been my ambition throughout my life to start a company. Little did I know how hard it would be. And Neeva itself came as a result of a set of discussions that I had with my co-founder, Vivek. We speak a lot. This is a favorite topic among us tech geeks, talking about innovation, talking about disruption. And so we wanted to create a product that would be useful and disruptive. We settled on search because both of us love search. There's like that little boy in me that literally used to bicycle up to libraries to read encyclopedias. It's like a thing that I actually did. And so there's that aspect of a search engine of providing useful information to people that like relates to me in a fairly foundational way. But we knew that like doing another search engine that competed with Google was kind of dumb. And so we wanted to make sure that we thought about the problem differently. We were tutored by the best. Like I was lectured endlessly by Larry on innovation and disruption, and so Neeva was set up to be from the beginning different. We were like, we stand for the user. We want to be uncompromising in that respect. We made this bet, for example, that users would pay for a service that they got enough utility out of. That was early Neeva. AI didn't really exist. And so, we had been at it for 2.5, 3 years, trying to build a better search engine. John Patel wrote like this really cool blog recently about us, where he said, if anyone asked me what's the most difficult problem on the planet to take on, he'd be like building a search engine. And then he said, these guys were idiot enough not just to take that problem on. They said they're going to create a different business model and ask people to pay for something that is free. They're like, they settled to churn not one ocean, but two of them. That's Neeva. It's a hard problem. But sometimes, it's a matter of being at the right place at the right time. And that sort of leads into AI and how I think it is going to fundamentally alter how we look at information and consuming it. And so it's first 3 years have been very rough, but over the last 3-4 months, Vivek and I feel like we make more progress in 1 week of us working hard now than we would do in like a quarter of working hard in like 2020 and 2021. It's an exhilarating place to be.
That's really fascinating. And let's get into that, what that means for the business. But you folks raised a lot of money at the start. So how did that process go? And will you need to raise more going forward?
We did raise a lot of money. Building a search engine is one of the hardest things on the planet because it starts out with things like make a copy of the internet and figure out how to have an index of the best pages from the copy, and then be ready for anything that anyone on the planet can think of typing into you and give them good results. It's a ridiculously difficult problem. Just our infrastructure costs are in the many millions of dollars every year. We raised actually close to $90 million, which is an astronomical amount of money. But we've been at this for 4 years. We'll be going into our 5th year. I would estimate that we will need to raise sometime next year. But here's the important but. We have a product that we are proud of. I can show you Neeva today on a set of queries and say, this is the state of the art. This is the best experience that there is. And for a 50% company to do that, yes, spending a bunch of money, compared to like the titans that are spending, like $3 billion a year, plus thousands of the best engineers on the planet. To me, this is like innovation distilled into like this tight pack as much as it is possible. Yes, building search engines is hard, but when you then can create a great product, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So speaking of, before we get into the AI, other search engines, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, Google is the big dog in that, but there's others, right? There's Bing.
That's
And how did you view DuckDuckGo then? Wasn't that providing a similar service?
So they're basically the commercial search engines all start at one of two places, at Google or at Bing. These are the folks that are doing the hard work of like indexing the web, crawling the web, running a search system, building an ads team, and having advertisers run ads on them. Duck licenses Bing, and so it is not a product company. So they take Bing search, they take Bing ads, and they create a privacy layer. We are pretty much the only company outside of Google and Bing that is creating a search engine as a product from the ground up. And you can see it in like the pace of innovations that have already come out and are coming out in the next few weeks. We are able to do AI because we understand the internet. We are able to do AI because we run sort of these large language models ourselves. So we are uniquely positioned. As I said, this was a lot of deferred gratification. because like you don't get bonus points from your users for crawling the web. They're like, I just want to search. But doing that has placed us in a great position of being able to innovate very, very rapidly.
Got it. So tell me about how you're integrating AI, and will this compete with what we are projecting Bing will do as well?
Let me start with AI, and we will and then we will touch on how I think it's going to affect search. At a core level, there are these models called large language models that have essentially been trained on all of the text on the planet. It's kind of funny, but one of the big insights that people had was rather than generate what is called labeled data, like what should these models learn to do, some person came up with a very clever idea that these models should learn to predict words that have been removed from sentences on the internet. So you download all of the pages, and you randomly obliterate 15% of the words that are there on every page, and then you tell the model, why don't you learn to predict these words? So you basically have a huge amount of data that these models train on, and things like the number of parameters that they have has been on a tear. One way to think about it is these machine learning models have gone through 13 doublings in size, or the equivalent of 20 years of Moore's law. Think about how big computers were in 98 and compare it to now. These models have gone through that much growth in terms of total number of parameters just in 5 years. To a person, like imagine yourself in 99, if you could get your hands on an iPhone 13, you'd basically be like, this is impossible, this is magic. Similarly, I think when we look at these models now, it's pretty much magic. That's because so much scale has gone into them. And so what these models are amazing at doing is language, because that's what they have been trained on. They're incredibly fluent. And so they don't have as solid a grasp of like reality or recency. They don't know what happened yesterday, and they don't know what is real versus what is false, because they've just been like trained on all of the documents on the internet. Obviously, the internet has a bunch of truths and untruths and stuff like that. So they're incredibly fluid. They're able to understand like spoken language, written language, and write out answers to you in very, very convincing ways. Now to search. We think of AI as essentially like X-ray vision for the internet, meaning that you can look at a link and look at it in the context of this AI lens and be able to quickly tell what's on a page. If there is a list on the page, you can tell the AI, why don't you give me like the list that's on this page? They can go fetch that list for you. Or you can say things like, here are these two pages. They seem to roughly be about the same topic. Can you like summarize them for me? That they are able to, they're able to do that. What we have done very successfully with Neeva over the past few months, and that was an early launch that we did this month, is we use the power of the search engine to essentially set a reality context for these AI models. Instead of having these models just like freeform generate text, and they say a lot of like absurd things because they don't know true from false or recent from old, what we do is we use models that we have trained ourselves, set the reality context on them using a search engine, and then have them generate the answer. This means that they are able to generate answers that are fluent, that are backed by citations. So if I show something to you, I can tell you, hey, this is where the text came from. They're also recent. So you can look up on Neeva something recent, and we'll likely be able to generate an AI summary for you. So we also wanted to be cautious. We wanted people to be able to believe the answers that we were generating. So we used our skills both in AI and in search quality to make sure that we generated authentic answers, believable answers. And when we could not generate an answer, we just give you search results. We don't generate an answer. And we do that for more than 50% of queries. So that's our big aha, which is how do you use the power of these generative models to truly, truly create better better experience, and that's what we've been able to do. As I said, this is within a matter of months because we had been at this for a very long time.
So is it related to the Chat GPT, or is it another version of generative AI?
So we do all of our modeling ourselves. We operate at a scale for search that will bankrupt us if we try to use an API-based service. Just to give you an example, if you ask ChatGPT a question and give it, say, like 1,000 tokens, which is a decent-sized blog, it's going to cost you between 3 and 5 cents. Like right now, it's free, but that's the actual underlying cost. Now, imagine doing this for an index of 4 billion pages. That's like $120 million. Neeva's raised money, but not like that kind of money. What we do is we think in terms of being able to summarize pages or being able to generate answers at the scale of billions. And our benchmark is, for example, a summarization run on our entire index of 4 billion pages. We think we can do spending about $25,000, $30,000. And so we have had to develop a lot of this technology in-house because as a search engine, we just operate at a scale that like really requires that kind of efficiency. We do use data from like the model underlying ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, or there's another great company called Anthropic that we work with. But they often generate like training data for us that we then use and put into our own models. And that's going to be a big trend, by the way. I see a world next year in which these large language models, and even this year, will get commoditized, meaning like anyone will be able to get their hands on them. And more value is going to go to people that are taking the power of these tools and creating useful products for you and me. And we're kind of excited to be at like the forefront of applying AI, applying large language models to create better products.
Got it. Now, is the Neeva AI, I was just at the site, was I using AI or just regular Neeva?
We only require that you have an account in order to get Neeva AI answers. We put in that restriction because we get hit hard by spammers and scrapers a lot, and so we needed like a basic level of protection for that. But as long as you're signed in, you have access to the AI.
Okay, and so just for folks who haven't been to the site yet, what would be a comparison between what they would get on the former site and the Neeva AI? Just an example.
So for example, if you look up Reid Hoffman on Neeva, you're going to get an AI answer that summarizes his career. And it borrows from, it understands the content of Wikipedia, of Greylock, of other places to come up with a beautiful summary of his career. But it's not just that, this AI's general purpose. I don't know, if you type something like cucumber benefits, as I just did, you will get a cited summary that says like, they're a great source of vitamin, minerals, antioxidants. And so on a ton of queries, you don't really have to do anything. You type in the query, we will summarize the best of the web on top, show you where these are coming from. And we're launching a feature tomorrow that will also give you, we call it a citation card. It will give you a per site card that shows you what came from that site. It's going to be visual. The experience is it's effortless. Compared to, I need to click on 2 or 3 links to figure out what is going on. You look at this and you're going to go like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I guess I'm going to click and go to this site in order to take some action, sign up for a list, go buy a product. This has the power to give you a single, authoritative, believable answer for most of the questions you have.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. I can't wait. Now, will the business model change?
That's not the plan. We have a freemium business model where the basic product is free. And being a premium member gives you unlimited queries, gives the power to connect other data sources like Slack and Google Drive to your Neeva account. It also gives you additional benefits that we provide with partners. So you get a password manager, you get a VPN, things like that. We're planning to continue the model. The AI is expensive to run. And so it might be the case that we offer a limited version of that to the free members, and then say like premium gets you unlimited AI, things like that. We are very proud of the fact that we are relentlessly customer focused. Our goal, our dream is to provide perfect answers for you every single time. And I think that part is important. I mean, for what it's worth, we are also having a number of conversations about providing some of our infrastructure, the crawl table, the search API, even the AI answers themselves, about syndicating it to other people. We want to be thoughtful about our monetization. But I think it is really important that the core product stay relentlessly customer focused.
That's really exciting. And so the cost today is how much?
I mean, in terms of providing the search service, you mean?
I mean, for customers, what's
great. Sorry, great question. Our Neeva subscription is $50 per year, and that's the plan that most folks end up using. In Europe, it's roughly around 50 euros. We try to keep the price, roughly purchasing parity equal, and so it is meant to be an inexpensive service. For example, most users of search end up using it like 10, 20 times a day. So you're really talking about using that several hundred times each month. We think if you're going to provide better answers, for you, you don't have to worry about like, hey, is someone trying to show me an ad and get me to do something I don't really want to do. So there are a lot of positive benefits that you get with the membership. Plus, you also, support a little company that is willing to think differently and actually create a useful service going against conventional wisdom.
No, that seems very reasonable. Now, what's the forecast like 3 or 5 years from now? How many paying customers do you expect to have?
So it's early in the journey. We expect to break like the million in annual run rate in the next 2 months, which is an important milestone for any startup. I would estimate that for us to be self-sustaining, we need between 5 and 10 million subscribers to sort of truly run all of our infrastructure at scale, have the team that can support it. We have a number of exciting partnerships that are coming up. We have a great partnership with Dashlane, which is a password manager. We have another one coming up soon with ProtonMail. We are in discussions. And this Neeva AI has accelerated a lot of these kinds of partnerships that will give us more distribution. So my hope really is that it's like we grow on what is considered like a good clip out here in the valley, which is the triple, double, which is roughly like you go from 1 million to roughly 72 million over the space of 5 years. That's considered excellent growth. That's the kind of benchmark that we are looking at. Of course, it would be thrilling if on the back of this AI wave we are able to grow faster.
Great. And so let's just take a sort of a macro look at the industry. You're a partner at Greylock, one of the top VCs in the country. How are you seeing sort of the industry as far as startups and new ventures in this space? I have a feeling you're excited about, but give us sort of that macro view of how you and your team and the larger investor community is seeing it.
To be honest with you, it is. I think this is a terrifying time for startups. Primarily because we went from an era of like 10 years of basically what I would call free money, where money, like interest rates, were close to zero. And so borrowing costs were close to zero. And so there was plenty of VC money, and it was like growth at all costs, to one in which there's actual cost of capital. And so what you're seeing is that what are called like revenue multiples are compressing in a pretty big way. There was this very influential article written recently. Bill Gurley, one of the most celebrated VCs in the Valley, has written recently about how he thinks like half of the unicorns in existence last year are just going to go bankrupt because they cannot adjust fast enough to the reality of how expensive money is today. So I think that part is very difficult for startups to deal with, and this feeds into our calculus. We were focused on user growth, great product. All of a sudden, we have to be making revenue, and we have to be self-sustaining, and so I think there is a big reset in how investors, but also the public markets, obviously, are thinking about startups and growth. Used to be that people routinely invested at 50 times forward revenue last year. I think those days are gone for quite a while. And so I think this is a very sobering time for startups. And to be honest with you, a lot of VCs are trying to figure out how to even calibrate some of these things. You just don't know. So I think this is a time of a fair amount of uncertainty, both for investors as well as startups. Some areas are hot. AI is hot. I don't think that $29 billion from, or was it $10 billion from Microsoft would have been made with fractional calculations. There are some technologies that are seen to be world changing. But remember, like Web3 was that last year.
Right. But so AI is obviously a bright spot. So
that's correct.
Is that exciting for investors, as far as, is there's still hype, right? But there's still so much potential. How do you view?
As I said, these models are, they provide a degree of fluency that is unmatched before. And the way to think about this is imagine the world before a keyboard and and a screen. And think about how you interacted with like the outside world. It was a phone. That was the only way in which you could interact. And so there's like a very strong, and you get a sense of like before and after. Like something like what we are doing right now was like basically impossible, for anyone. So I think of AI as a similar foundational kind of technology in just like interpreting information, both what we say and what the world is saying. And so I think this will manifest itself into useful applications. But I think the power is going to be in people that create these useful things and do fun stuff like build customer loyalty and solve problems that people have. Is all the boring stuff of creating companies. I think I actually think we are like pretty much at peak hype when it comes to foundation models. I think there's a bunch of companies, including Neeva, that need to like now deliver and create enduring value.
Got it. Now put your entrepreneur hat on, as if you had ChatGPT. You were just starting out.
Yeah.
I just saw something on a video as far as an entrepreneurship student using it to write a plan and get funding for it. And I was just curious if, I've been in entrepreneurship my whole life. So I'm curious to see how this will help that entrepreneurial process for nascent entrepreneurs to get started and get traction. What's your perspective on that?
I'm personally very skeptical.
Okay.
I'm skeptical because I'm like, you can't succeed in a college because you got someone to write an essay for you, can you? Maybe the essay will get you into the college, but it's not going to help you succeed. Things like a business plan come from like blood, sweat, and tears. Like it's like actually talking to piles of people, understanding an area, understanding problems, figuring out what like solution you can create, making sure that it is possible to create that solution. If this is a little bit like, I am sure you've run into the situation where someone sends you a resume and it's like, looks amazingly impressive, and you're like, okay, I'm going to double click on, you say, like take your pick, like Python really well, or you're a brilliant public speaker. Yeah, talk to me, 5 minutes. And they can't say anything. And so, I'm super skeptical about like, true insight is always just, it's really hard. Sure, you can have it compose something that is pretty quick. This morning, I was like, I was talking to some folks in Web3, and I had Claude, the Anthropic bot, write me a little poem about some goofy topic that we were discussing. I think it's very cool, but I would not mistake that for depth.
Got it. All right. Well, when we speak about young people or colleges or young entrepreneurs, let's talk about tips for young people in general, right? We're in this new age. They have this new technology. We're learning about some of the downsides in education, the challenges with generative AI. How should young people see the future, right? I mean, should they take advantage of all this technology? A few years ago, we were saying everyone should be a coder. Now we're not saying that. So, I mean, are there sort of some general guidance you give to young people these days?
It's a tool. It's like other tools. You should be careful about the output that comes from the tool. Things like ChatGPT also have this particular problem that they are fluent, confident, and wrong, and so you can't really believe everything that it can do. But certainly, it can be a helpful asset in creativity. It's actually very good if you say like, hey, even things like tell me 10 things I should do in New York. The list is not bad. It's not deep. If on the other hand, you say like, create like a walking tour for me through Upper West Side, yeah, I would be skeptical about following that walking tour. But there are things that it is good at, things that it's not very good at. Like calculators did not mean the end of our ability with math. And so ChatGPT does not mean that like creativity is now outsourced. Can be a useful source of ideas. You see artists using things like DALI or Stable Diffusion. So I think they enrich our lives. But at the end of the day, the depth that you're going to get from actually reading a book and digesting it is not the same as the one that you're going to get by reading, Cliff's Notes. I think there is a very important part of like live your life to the fullest that I think matters a lot. These tools can enrich us, and if you let them, they will rob you of things like your attention or your own creativity and stuff like that.
Yeah, that I appreciate that advice. We're coming to the end of our conversation here, Sridhar. This has been really fantastic. I've learned so much. We usually end, however, with a poem or a saying or a quote. So, what would you like to share with us today?
This is a quote from Gandhi. He said, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." I love this combination of urgency and patience. Urgency to get like things done and not wait for that golden moment when we'll all have time to go like whatever, clean the room or like call an old friend. But to have the patience to say like, yes, it's fine, I will spend half an hour reading a long article or reading a book or just writing something. So I love that.
I like that too. And then, it actually, you started the conversation off with you were a patient, ambitious, you know, young professional. So
Yeah.
obviously it's appropriate. Okay. This has been great, Sridhar. Thanks so much. And we look forward to all the great success coming out of Neeva. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.